Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is Wednesday, February 19th. This is Aragon Live, our weekly video podcast. With me today, I've got Ken Delaney, Adam Pease, and Betsy Burton. And this is our, our shot at what's going on in tech. We do this every week. Check out our YouTube channel on Aragon Research on YouTube, also aragonresearch.com, because we've basically gone public with our podcast, which we've been doing for over 11 years. We have all the past recordings, and we're putting a lot of them up online, at least from last year. So start out, actually, I'm going to start out with the Google teases Gemini Advanced release, and Betsy can pile on. So here's the deal, is that there's just a flurry, and these are the top 3 stories, the ones that are bolded. There's a flurry of announcements because, Adam's going to talk about like Grok 3, but since DeepSeek, the Chinese LLM, came out, there's just been a flurry of activity, stacking models, training models on top of existing LLMs, which is what we think DeepSeek did. So Google sent out a note this week about basically they have a Gemini AI premium subscription now, which is $19.99 per month. And then they've got experimental mode stuff that they just put out, which is the 2.0 Pro experimental and Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking. And again, that's on top of their Gemini app, which you can download for free for Google and iOS, and their Notebook LM, which is their kind of their research tool, which they also have a premium version. So they're basically now offering just a standalone subscription to kind of counter what OpenAI has been doing, and OpenAI really has done phenomenally well with their subscription because they're trying to target influencers. Again, for the enterprise, they've got Vertex. They've also got with a workspace with Gemini, which is now bundled in. You don't pay extra. I mean, net is about $4 extra for us. But since we were paying, $20, we saved 16. So again, I think it's going to be a wild spring. We were just commenting about it's just literally weekly announcements, and we're going to touch on some of the other ones here today. But that's the quick one on Gemini. I remember Google has their Google Next in April, so there'll probably be a flurry of activity between now and the first week of April. So I'll turn it over to Betsy to talk about Oracle.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, Jim, one of the things that was an enhancement within Google is that they're teasing that they can predict people's age within Google's using AI, and their goal is to make it safer for young users. I'm not sure everyone's going to be really thrilled about them being able to guess their age, especially women of a certain age. But anyhow, I thought that was kind of a little tease they did as well. So Oracle's doing a number of enhancements into NetSuite, and this is something I'm really going to spend some time and try and blog about. But it seems like Oracle's taking a very, very different tack towards AI enhancements in NetSuite than, say, Salesforce is doing with their environment. Oracle's really looking at using AI primarily to help people to be able to analyze data more effectively, to be able to run the environment more effectively, and a little bit about some of the user enhancements. But they don't have the kind of co-pilot like we see within Salesforce and Microsoft in that environment as much. So they're more focused on, it seems to me, more focused on the developer and manager of the NetSuite environment. So they've gone ahead and made a number of enhancements that I thought were really interesting. Some having to do with boosting productivity issues that they've added into their support for custom text fields, prompt management, sort of AI. And they did add an AI assistant that helps some product configuration issues. So it's not as much about the end users having a co-pilot like what Salesforce has done. It's more about integrating into the system. So I thought it was worth looking at what Oracle is doing there and their enhancements. I expect we're going to hear more from them, but it's interesting that they're taking such a very different tack.
Well, first of all, we've been talking about Oracle a lot more in the last 6 months, and not only just in cloud, but now here, with their whole NetSuite approach. So I think this is good that they're back kind of in the groove, and they're doubling down on healthcare. They're updating NetSuite. So I think it's good to see Oracle really kind of jumping back into the tech game.
I agree, Jim. But it's interesting. I'm going to repeat something we talked about the other week, which is, in my view, Oracle is going bottoms up, right? It's adding AI into the foundations, versus some of the other vendors, again, Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, some of the that are adding AI on the front end first. So I think that tact is really different.
I think they do need to spend some time on showing people, that the users, that they get some benefit out of this too. They can't be left behind relative to Salesforce, et cetera, on that front. They have,
and that's really not what they've been doing. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Adam, OpenAI.
Yeah, so OpenAI has moved to basically rationalize its AI model offering user experience in the next update. And so if anyone has used OpenAI recently, you'll know that there's kind of a bewildering drop down full of different AI models, you know, with kind of confusing strings of number names, you know, from GPT 4.0 to O3 mini high. Like, it's very confusing basically. And so Sam Altman has acknowledged this and said that they want to move with GPT-5 and later releases towards a sort of unified single application experience where you don't have to select different models for different tasks, which I think definitely would make a lot more sense. And yeah, I'm frankly pretty shocked that they have continued to deliver this weird drop-down list experience for so long. You know, I can't imagine it's easy for customers who don't have sort of detailed knowledge of what the different models do to really even use the stuff. So I think this will be definitely a welcome change. It's been pretty bad user experience working with it so far.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a couple comments on the three things we just talked about. Number one, I think we're starting to see more and more systems begin to integrate these base.
I think we lost Ken.
Yeah, I think we lost him.
All right, we'll come back. We'll come back. Let's just jump to the no-code app development in the AI era. So there's a big phenomenon going on with, you know, basically LLMs that can write code, they can inspect code, but the bigger one is no-code app development, where a number of new tools are coming out where you can basically, you know, tell it what you want and it develops an app. So I think this is a big development, and you know, I think the thing of understanding how to code, you're still going to have to be able to inspect code that's written by an assistant. But you know, we really are speeding up app development, and you know, mobile app development, which I've covered and done work in that area, used to be very complex. And basically, what we're saying now is it's not complex anymore.
I know, isn't that amazing? So let me ask you, Jim, would we call what? I mean, we had code development co-pilots. Is this more, you know, agent development?
Yeah, you could say that some of these app development tools are agents. They will basically go and do work for you,
right?
Give you something back. So yeah, it's an app development agent. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just we're looking at all these terms of, you know, assistants and agents and agentic and all this sort of stuff. So I agree. I think this is really the age of agents come to, or the agents come to app development. All right. Cool.
Adam, talk about Grok 3.
Yeah, so this is a big one for AI. So Grok 3 has released in the form of two different models. There's basically a bigger one and a smaller one, and the XAI is focused on doing kind of reasoning style AI, similar to what OpenAI did in O1, where it has reasoning tokens and a thinking process. You know, people will know that DeepSeek also did a similar thing, and we also know that XAI had a massive compute cluster that they used to train this model. So there's a big arms race here for compute. And it seems like it's paid off for them a lot more than their previous release has, kind of catapulting them into the running with some of these other big AI companies. You know, people should take that with a grain of salt, and I think go use the model for yourself and compare it to these other leading models. But according to at least benchmarks, they seem to be competitive with the recent O3 mini release in terms of these math and programming benchmarks, which is definitely a massive stride for XAI if that turns out to be true basically universally and consistently. But we have seen sometimes these benchmarks, we don't always get the most accurate picture just by listening to the benchmark. So yeah, I'm personally excited to spend some time tooling around with it and seeing how it compares in my opinion. But I don't know if either of you have gotten a chance or if you have any observations on XAI that you want to share.
I think the thing is there's Ken. I think that Ken, we're actually just talking about the Grok announcement. So first of all, it's a counter to all the work that's going on. So you basically have hemispheric based AI wars. That's the thing that's kind of going on here is you have because we're going to talk about Alibaba. So Alibaba released something. So you have Chinese companies like DeepSeek, you have American companies like OpenAI, you have French companies like Mistral. And so basically it's both governments trying to push this and also for enterprises trying to figure out which ones should they use. And remember what we've told them, we have a risk management downloadable asset on our website. Some of them you should not use because they will not indemnify you. So you should not use them to write stuff, develop images. It's fine for personal use, but we don't advise if they don't indemnify you, which OpenAI does not, that you should not use those. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at from an enterprise perspective, because again, we do focus more on the enterprise, but I think this is a very positive development and we'll watch and see. And I think we'll start kicking the tires on this a little bit. All right. So Ken and I are going to talk about the Apple announcement. So the iPhone 16e was announced today with a brand new Apple modem. So that's the C1 modem replacing, their partner, which I'm drawing a blank. So basically using, a partner's modem, and they're not going to do that anymore. Ken, you want to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think it's the lower cost version of Apple's iPhones that's necessary for a lot of markets. And they finally upgraded the technology, put USB-C in there. They've got Apple Intelligence in there. So it's a good mainstream entry that they desperately needed to fill in the gap here and complete their Apple Intelligence issue. It's going on now, but I don't know whether they announced. They've been rumored to.
Yeah, it's announced. It's out. And by the way, it's Qualcomm. So all the existing Apple phones use Qualcomm, their partner, and Qualcomm is one of the dominant cellular modem providers.
But have they announced the new? They weren't really sure whether they're going to announce new iPad Air.
No, none of that's out yet. Yeah, that's just the iPhone.
AirTag possibly. It's
no.
What else they announced? Because going on.
Well, I think that's going. It may still be going on, but they did put the 16e out, and to Ken's point, it's sleeker. They're saying it's got the best power usage because of the C1 modem. So, I think they'll probably still continue to use. Again, some of the modems, you have to work globally, and the Qualcomm stuff does work very well globally. But again, smaller. It's $599 price point. That's a very good price point. Compared to the high-end phones, which you're talking, well.
Yeah, I mean, in parallel, Huawei, who ditched, Google's version of Android's, been kind of going their own way, and internationally they've been making some strides here. So Apple needed this. Yeah.
So I think, like I said, there's going to be, it's just like product refresh time, before the middle of the year, and the SE, the old Apple SE iPhone is gone. So anyway, it is Apple Intelligence, and by the way, new version of Apple Intelligence is supposed to be coming out today as well. So that's kind of cool. Let's talk about the Apple Alibaba partnership. So Apple's going to partner with Alibaba for basically Apple Intelligence in basically APAC, maybe not Australia, but I think that's good for Apple, probably good for Alibaba. And there's other big, heavyweights out there that we haven't really heard much from, like Tencent. So I would say that Alibaba's flexing their muscle, and we'll have to just watch that and see. But you can see that there's a lot of standalone LLM companies. The earlier comment about, embedding technology into the app versus adding it on top of the app. That's a design architecture. Betsy's our architecture expert here. So
anyway, to add to this thing, you said earlier that, possibly in the future, people will be able to pick their favorite LLM in whatever platform they're working on. This is probably an example of that migration, because in China, you'll use this, probably in other countries you use other ones. I'm sure the EU will pass laws to make it possible for people to pick the favorite LLM and not be mandated.
Well, I think Apple's the one where it says, do you want to use ChatGPT to answer this question? So Apple's one of the first ones to actually give you that option. I haven't seen it work yet, but we'll have to see, how far people are willing to unbundle. Because remember, there's money tied to this and usage, and also terms and conditions. So, if you're going to say, hey, I want you to use Alibaba, what's the terms and conditions of using Alibaba? So it does get a little bit more complicated. We just launched Provisor AI, and we are updating our terms as well because it's complicated. Okay, so the next one is goes back to security and the whole issue that getting not that much coverage of ransomware firms. Basically, these are hackers that want money, and they're targeting government. So the state of Virginia's Attorney General office was attacked. And also healthcare companies, where they're basically taking down systems and asking for money. Let's put it this way: some of the things that have happened have been because some of the healthcare firms are owned by private equity, some of them are not. But it just means that there needs to be more discipline around security practices, not just security technology, but the practices that you have relative to things like password management, even at the server level. So anyway, there's going to be some new technology that we'll be talking about, coming forward that will help to automatically stop some of the things that are happening that are bad. But it's not that complicated. It's basically, backing up devices, having password management policies, and if you do those two things, it makes it harder, because these attacks are very sophisticated. And sometimes, they're going to target an admin, and the admin won't even know that it happened because they're so sophisticated. So it's easier said than done. But I think the other thing is security people are overwhelmed. But look, government needs to step up their game. The healthcare firms definitely need to step up their game, because there's a lot of data at risk, and a lot of information at risk. Any other comments from people on this?
No.
All right, Betsy, you want to talk about Thomson Reuters?
So this is an interesting case. I was just checking, making sure I had all the background on it. It's sort of interesting. Federal judge in Delaware ruled in favor of Thomson Reuters that a small legal research company called Ross Research or something, which is now defunct, by the way, had infringed on Thomson Reuters copyrights, because they were basically scraping from Reuters to use it in their AI engine. So it was an interesting one, because it's a relatively small case, but it's kind of one of the first times that we've seen somebody win this sort of a copyright infringement against a company. I think it's interesting that Thomson Reuters won this against a company that was also focused in on doing legal research, because Thomson Reuters is going to be very specific and very protective of their copyright issues, and as particularly against a company that's going to be doing the same sort of a business. So it's key, because this is one of the first wins that we've seen somebody doing this with it in terms of AI copywriting. It's a particular one because it is two organizations that are very focused on copyright. I think the bottom line is people are going to need to be much more careful about how their AI engines are using information that's garnering from other organizations. Specifically, are your AI engines and is the information that you're getting from AI scraping essentially from other organizations? They're going to have to be a lot more careful about it. I believe that the companies that are going to be the most protective about this are going to be the people with intellectual copyright. but that's probably where we're going to see most of the action.
Yeah, paywalls are going to matter.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So it's a key first case, and I'm going to write up a quick blog about it, but it's an interesting first case. Adam, Perplexity.
Yeah, so Perplexity, a company we may have talked about a couple times, but we haven't covered as much. But it's an interesting AI company. For those that don't know, they basically do search engine assisted research, so kind of integration of LLMs and search engines for research purposes. You know, both for science, academia, you know, enterprise research. And they've recently released what they're calling deep research. So they basically named it the same thing OpenAI named their research tool, but they're releasing it on their free tier to all users. And it's a much cheaper tool than OpenAI's deep research, which comes up at $200 with the pro subscription. And so this is a cool, you know, a cool example of kind of these research functionalities quickly going from being a you know, unique offering to being mainstream commodity. So I think it goes to show there maybe is not a huge amount of moat around some of these new product offerings from companies like OpenAI that, you know, they might stun for a week or two, but it doesn't seem to be too hard for these competitors to release pretty similar offerings, and just kind of, you know, characteristic of the AI arms race we're in, I think. But
You know, Adam, I think Jim said something this morning before we got on the line, which is, you know, how could we have predicted the rate of change that's happening right now? I mean, it's just amazing how quickly some of these competitors are able to come up with, you know, equal if not surpassing capabilities.
right, it's gotta be stressful if you're OpenAI, because we know that they're kind of breakneck trying to release new features to stay on the top and stay relevant. And yeah, they're just getting.
But very few people can really assess these in the speed at which they're changing and evolving. I mean, I think most people today are going to look at this as magic, whereas in the age of search, you know, people knew what it was doing, going out to sites, retrieving things, giving you a list of what it found. Now it's very confusing, and I think, you know, the question is whether, you know, are we in an age of blind faith, you know, with these AI systems, where we use them, but we're really not sure what we're using, you know, what its implications are, how good it is. I mean, it's going to be very difficult for the user to tell. It's not like trying to go out and buy a lawnmower, right?
And do they care, Ken? They probably don't care, right? You know, it goes back to some of the issues we've talked about in terms of security, privacy, and the rest of it. I mean, are people willing to blindly kind of just give up, you know, give that up in favor of using something that makes their lives and jobs easier? You know, in a lot of cases.
And potentially could lead them into, you know, if they don't understand something, could lead them into very precarious areas, for sure.
But again, do they care?
Training and understanding is needed, because people are basically, to your point, they're just doing it and they don't understand the implications of some of their actions. So there is training at the enterprise level needed for sure, and sometimes the consumer level. By the way, just on the, you know, the whole thing about the speed of movement is OpenAI is also working on their first prototype of their own GPU, their own AI GPU. So I mean, this is literally crazy. Now they're partnering; they got a partner. But this is literally how quick things are going.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just kind of extrapolating the list. Maybe we need State Farm to issue a AI insurance policy, so when you use it and something bad happens, you're protected, right? Jim's talking about indemnification all the time, but what about personal indemnification? You're gonna have to buy that.
Well, not yet, but basically, look, it's hard to get insurance for indemnification, but you basically, you know, you it's hard for personally to get it, but for corporate people get that all the time. And that's why they basically say we will indemnify you and cover you for about up to this amount.
Yeah.
Even we say that.
Chubb and other corporate insurers need to get into. They got into cyber insurance, so now they get into AI insurance.
All right. So look, this is really cool. And again, February 19th, covered a lot of ground. We'll have this recording up on our YouTube channel later today. Thanks, team.